So I don't want to mislead physicians listening out there thinking, oh yeah, you can in 15 months, but you're going to have to put in the amount of hours and the work that we put in, which was, as you know, when you own your own business, you're not off. You don't take hours off, you sleep, and then that's about it.
Are you ready to transform your life? This is a no-nonsense show helping immigrants like you create generational wealth, even while working full-time. Get ready to take notes. Here's your host, Saket Jain.
Welcome back, Migrate to Wealth listeners. Today, I have the pleasure to introduce to you a man whose story is super inspirational. I have not known him for a long time, but the little time that I've known him, his story is so touching. And, we always talk in this show is that your life is always going to present you a moment where you have to make a fork on the road, where you have to make a decision. Do you want to continue with what you have or the path that you were on, or you want to change that path to do something different? And Danny Bramer, who is our guest today, his story is one where the life presented him a fork, but it took away the original path, right? So he didn't necessarily have the choice to stick with the original path. He was forced to figure out a new path. And that's really the story. What I want you to listen to this show is more about inspiration. You may or may not be able to resonate completely with the story or with the background. What I want you to look at this as a metaphor, as an abstract story where you think, hey, quitting job is not an option because that's the most comfortable thing for you, or investing passively is not right for you because you just don't know enough. Look at it from that perspective. If you were in Danny's shoes, how would you have made that choice? And how would you have pivoted? That's really what I want to give. I don't want to give away everything in the intro. I really want you to take that perspective as you're watching, or listening to the episode. Well, thank you again, Danny. Appreciate it, buddy. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on the Migrate to Wealth podcast, Saket. I really appreciate the way you continually give of your time and talents to help all those in your investor circle. And I've definitely benefited from your podcast and learned a ton from you in the past. So I particularly love the way that you give back in the form of educating the underserved youth on practices to build wealth for themselves. So well done here.
And that's one thing that's common to both of us. I know you're very mission oriented, and we'll talk about that on the show as well. But before we go deeper, Danny, tell us one thing. I always open up the episode with that. What does Migrate to Wealth mean to you?
To me, Migrate to Wealth is a process, is a journey. It's not something that happens overnight. It is intentional, and it takes effort. And if anybody tells you differently, they're probably somebody you don't want to take a lot of advice from.
Yeah. Oh, completely agree. And Danny, what does wealth mean to you, or meant to you, or mean to you? You can do past or present, either one.
I think it's changed over my lifetime, right? I mean, when you're younger, success has a totally different meaning than when you're older. To me, success is living life on your terms, living a purposeful life, a passion life, a life of fulfillment. And, I think that really is what a truly wealthy life looks like. I think I always think about the movie It's a Wonderful Life. And the last note, he who has friends is, the most wealthy, or something like that. I'm probably butchering that quote, but it's true. I think living a life of purpose and passion and having people around you that you care about on a daily basis is truly the definition of wealth to me.
Completely agree, Danny. I think that's really one of the biggest reasons why we started the show. It's really trying to change the narrative of wealth, because you're right. When you're young, all you want to do is be rich. And when I say rich, at that time, it's all about money, right? That I want to have a yacht, I want to have a private jet, I want to do whatever that money, material wealth meant at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And as we all, and I think it's probably every one of us has gone through that cycle where you start with that, and then you hit a little bit of success, and then you realize that's it. I thought it would mean very different. It would feel different, but it doesn't necessarily last for too long. You may have a high for a day, for a week, for a month, for a year, but eventually all of us will hit that, not rock bottom, but bottom again, saying, what's next? And that was the premise of this entire show, that let's talk to people who have already been there. So hopefully it won't take you age 50 to realize that this is not it. It may get there. You may get there 25. You may get there 20. You may get there much faster. So they have a whole life to create an impact. So love that. So thank you again for doing that. So Danny, Tell us how your journey from wealth, from what it used to be to what it is now. What does that journey look like? What does the story arc look like? Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so thanks for asking. I'm a physician by training, but a serial entrepreneur for a living for many years now. I've been a business owner, a real estate investor for well over 2 decades. I've gained tons of experience in a lot of different asset classes, and my story to wealth is a little convoluted, I guess. So bear with me, I guess. I'm the youngest of a very large family. 9 of us growing up. My dad was a builder in the 70s. Interest rates were sky high, so we didn't have a ton of means growing up. But my dad believed in hard work. He believed in integrity, honesty, character, and he walked those things out every day in his life. And I didn't really know what I wanted to be when I grew up, but I knew I wanted to help others because my parents valued that and they passed that down to us. They were always generous with their time and finances, what little finances they had. And, fast forward to my first mission trip out of the country, and I was really hooked. Medicine was where I wanted to be. So I went back to medical school actually a little later in life. And the first possibilities of creating generational wealth through real estate was when I used single family rentals and flips to help actually pay for medical school. And after residency, had an unbelievable job in Alaska. It was quite literally one of the most beautiful places on the planet if you haven't been. I know you said you have a trip coming up there. I'd be happy to help you itinerary that out. I was a partner in my anesthesia practice, 4 amazing kids, an awesome wife. Life was really, really good. And then kind of what started as a floater in my left eye while I was balancing my checkbook quickly turned into something that would change the course of mine and my family's life forever. Tons of testing, many sleepless nights. We found that I had a progressive autoimmune condition. It was pretty rare, but thankfully it was only going to affect my vision. But it was going to take away my ability to provide for my family. I'm an anesthesiologist. That's my training, my certification. So I remember the day that I had to call my partner and tell him, hey man, I'm not going to be able to come in because I can no longer see well enough to do my job. And little did I know that was going to be the last time I ever practiced clinical anesthesia again. Super hard moment, very tough to digest, but all the years of hard work and dedication and effort that I say my family, because you don't go to med school alone. You go with your family. They go through it all with you. And all the residency, everything really was in jeopardy. But, my faith and my family were very integral in getting me through those tough times. And while I was still searching for diagnoses and everything else, still have to provide for your family, right? So I started researching other career and business opportunities. I went to conferences, looked into becoming, a chief medical officer, going into the C-suite of the hospitals, and had some offers there that were attractive. But at some point I realized these are all jobs and they could be taken away from me as well. Yeah. As an employee, you're one catastrophic life event away from potential financial devastation. So we all need to work. I'm not saying don't work, but we also need to prepare for a time when that may be taken away from us. So as I navigated that new normal, we went through some tough transitions, and the idea that materialized and stuck going forward was no matter what the path was, I didn't want my income or my family's wealth to be based on a certain circumstance or a job, because they can change very, very, very quickly. And I was experiencing that firsthand. Yeah. So that's when I jumped into, researching about different asset classes and those types of things. Saw my dad lose really badly in the stock market twice when he needed it the most during his retirement years. And so paper assets really didn't hold an appeal to me. Did live in Texas or Oklahoma at the time, and I wasn't an oil and gas man yet. So striking it rich in oil didn't seem very likely. I was in Fairbanks, Alaska, and Alaska equals gold, right? So gold fever was running wild, but that seemed to be more speculating than investing to me. So then came the real estate. And that's where, I had those previous success flipping homes, keeping some single family rentals to help pay for medical school, and read a book that should be required reading for any person looking how to create generational wealth, which is, you could probably finish it for me, Rich Dad Poor Dad. Yeah. And then I had a great encounter with a medical school colleague at a wedding we were both in, and all these factors kind of combined to really change my trajectory. And came to realize that cash flow that comes from real estate can last for generations and jobs don't. So I was hooked on real estate at that point.
Love that, Danny. There's so much in that story, man. And we're going to pass a few elements of that. Not because the whole story is not important. I think because I want to get the nuggets out that I think that the audience is going to benefit from. So if I may ask you, and if you don't feel comfortable, tell me. We can always move on. If you go back to the time of your diagnosis, because you're right, you and your family have spent a lot of sleepless nights, sacrifices, and all that stuff. Going to medical school is a decade's work, especially as you start looking at specialization. My wife's side of the family is all doctors. So I know exactly what they've gone through and still are going through. It's not an easy profession to be in because it's very demanding. So when you take us back to that time where you had that diagnosis, what was going through your head, right? Because the closest I can relate to that, and it's nowhere close, is when I got laid off in 2017. Now looking back, my pain was nothing as compared to yours, because at least my health wasn't getting affected, right? I was mentally devastated. My ego was bruised, but I could pick up the bags and do the same exact thing again if I wanted to. I chose a different path. But go back into that time if you can, kind of like what was really going through your head?
I mean, I would be lying if I said we just had this, right? We got this. And eventually we did. But initially it was fear. It was anger, not too much anger, but just like, wow, we came all this way to hit this roadblock. But, one of the things that really emerged between me and my wife was this peace that came about it. And quite honestly, I'd have to say that there's three tenets I kind of have in my life, and that's faith, family, and freedom. In those orders, that's kind of my centering mantra. And when tough things happen in our lives, it's time to believe what we believe, right? And not getting too deep into my faith, but that's my faith grounds me. It's really tied to everything I do. I start every morning in prayer and quiet meditation and do, I think, something that we have a mutual friend, Trevor McGregor. He taught me a while back, and I think he's termed it gratitude stacking throughout the day, where, several times per hour, I bring something to mind that I'm grateful for. It's really hard to be sour or angry or upset when you flood your mind with gratefulness. And, my family is a close second. They're my why. They're behind everything I do. So we've always prioritized family time, both quantity and quality. And, that changes as they get older and they're in college. But keeping the important things important, I think, really grounded me and gave me perspective in a storm that was really raging at that time in my life. So really, my faith and my family were the two big pillars that we leaned on during those times and still do.
Yeah, Danny, thank you for sharing that. Danny, one thing is I was thinking about it, and I don't know if you have that insight or not. You may. What was going through your wife's? Because
say again,
what was going through your wife's head at that time, right? What was
my wife's mind?
Your wife's mind. What was she working through? Because you were at least facing it, right? Mm-hmm. She probably felt helpless. What was going through her mind?
Well, I mean, we had moved to Alaska, just a year or so before, and she's an OBGYN, and we were able to do this move, and I was the primary earner, and she was able to stay home and be with the kids and really have a sweet time of life with them. So a lot of what's going to happen now, I've got this new life. If I've got this new sense of purpose with the kids and having all these amazing adventures and memories, making all these, am I going to have to go back to work full time? And we really didn't know what was going on for about a year and a half, right? So we thought initially I had a brain tumor. Then we thought I had MS, and I was on MS treatment for 6-8 months. And then the visual changes jumped over into my other eye, which then we realized, okay, that's not a common presentation of MS in a late 30s male. So just a lot of uncertainty and fear. But once again, if you ask her, well, she was here with me, but I think she would tell you the same two things, our faith in our family. We leaned heavily on those things.
Well, thank you, Danny, for sharing that. And I know we got on the little more vulnerable side of you, but I appreciate you digging into it, because my biggest concern is when somebody tells me, there's several of my friends recently have been laid off because, as I tell everyone, is we're all getting to an age where companies sometimes just need a reason to lay you off because they want younger blood. they'll never accept it, and I have no way to prove or disprove it. But I have this thesis, and I'm seeing this with a lot of my friends who are in that stage. They feel lost, they feel depressed, they feel like the path is no longer there, and they feel confused, and they still want to go back to another job, which you were just alluding towards is that, yeah, you can probably become a CMO or some sort of a corporate job where the lives are not at risk and you can work within your capabilities, but it's still a job. The universe has presented you a new way of saying your life is changing. Can you change your profession? Can you change the way you make money? And it did that. So tell us now more about it. When you were looking at that shift from being a full-time anesthesiologist to now becoming a full-time investor, before you picked the asset classes, what was again going through your head, right? Because, and I'll give you some context of where I'm going with this is, I hear a lot, I don't have enough money. I hear a lot, I don't have, to be a real estate investor, you need to own hundreds of homes, right? To have a cash flow produce, there's a lot of no's, right? Why you shouldn't do that. But I want to bring to light, what were the reasons for you to do it that overpowered that why you shouldn't do it? Because for anything that you want to do, there are 10,000 reasons why you shouldn't do it. And there's usually only one reason why you should do it. So help us understand that.
Right. And as physicians, we get into analysis paralysis quite a bit because we're taught all through medical school and residency that you make a mistake, people die.
Right.
And while that is a bit hyperbolic, sometimes it's true. So trying to find the right asset class and making that jump, to me, what helped me was having another colleague, a friend, a mentor that was already just one step ahead of me.
Yeah.
And seeing him have proof of concept, that really solidified, okay, and reading on my own, a lot of different about real estate and that asset class in particular. You know, as most physicians know, we learn a ton in medical school, but where we really hone our craft is in residency. So the business partner that I mentioned earlier, we sought out and we paid mentors in the space to teach us everything they knew about multifamily. That's what we jumped into first. We scaled very quickly, 815 units in a matter of a few years. And I was able to replace my income as a physician in about 15 months after buying our first apartment complex. So that was definitely proof of concept for me. That's when I was like, okay, this definitely is the direction I want to take my family for sure.
Love that. And tell me now. So let's go through one analysis right here. That when you talk to the young physicians now, giving that lens where your work meant everything to you, and you probably worked a lot of hours as an anesthesiologist, and I believe I have a few friends who are anesthesiologists. Seems just very stressful because a lot's depending on how much gas you put in somebody's body for them to be able to not feel something and still be able to wake up, right? And there's a lot that goes in. It's very stressful, I've heard. I've never been in that situation, so I can't describe that. To now giving a point where you said that in 15 months, your cash flow from the apartments was covering your salary as an anesthesiologist. So when you reflect back on that dramatic shift where you have to work your butt off to make that X amount of money, and now you're making that passively through investing in a multifamily, what was going through your head? And I don't know if you saw that before, because I'm assuming you had a few single family homes, but single families don't have that level of impact because you make $200, $300, the scale has to be there. But when you're buying a multifamily, definitely there is a scale. So help me understand what was going through your head when you saw the proof of what you were thinking is possible.
Yeah, relief, joy, my wife smiling, that was awesome. But really, I don't want to minimize the amount of work that we put into this. This was active. Like I said, we went out, it was myself and him, and, maybe one or possibly another partner in each of the deals. And we ended up scaling very quickly, actively. So I don't want to mislead physicians listening out there thinking, oh yeah, you can in 15 months, but you're going to have to put in the amount of hours and the work that we put in, which was, as you know, when you own your own business, you're not off. You don't take hours off, you sleep, and then that's about it. So there was a very concerted, hard driving effort to get there. That being said, though, I think with principal stacking, time value of money, cash flowing assets, those types of things, physicians can very readily be financially free in, 5, maybe 10 years to where their passive income is outpacing their income that they are making as a physician. And once or not even your income, but just your expenses. Once you've met your expenses, you're kind of out of the rat race. And then you're practicing because you want to, not because you have to. So, when I say that was a very concerted effort by myself and my business partner. He was still a full-time ER doc at that point, but a full-time ER doc at that point was 8 to 10 shifts a month. So he could still put a lot of effort into our real estate, building our real estate holdings as well. So,
Danny, let's talk about that for a second. So why should we'll talk about physicians for now, because I know that's that's somebody who will closely relate to you, and we have some physicians who listen to our show. Why should physicians focus on building passive wealth? What's happening in the industry? What's going on when you're talking to because when I'm talking to some of the physicians in my network, they're like, well, this is not for me. I don't care about these investments because real estate, I can't take tax advantage, this and that. There's, again, multiple no's, which I understand where they're coming from. But from a physician perspective, you were one of them. Why would you recommend them to build passive wealth?
Well, the first reason, because what happened to me, you're one catastrophic life event away from having your ability to practice taken away from you. Say you're a surgeon and you have a bad skiing accident and your left hand is rendered useless. It's an extreme example, right? But look at healthcare changes right now. Physicians I talk to daily are getting burned out because they're asked to see more patients for less compensation. DMOs are coming in and gobbling up these organizations. There's just a lot of uncertainty right now in job security for physicians. I mean, I know that sounds ridiculous having such a physician shortage in the US, but it's true. Physicians are concerned. I was talking to a radiologist up in New Jersey just a few days ago that really wanted to accelerate his investing because he was afraid that his contract was not going to be renewed.
Right.
So a lot of it has to do with, we all went into medicine. We didn't go in for the money or the prestige or anything like that. Most of us truly went in because we love serving others. We love helping people and healing people. So to be able to do that on your terms rather than your employer's terms is very, very empowering and fulfilling. And so most physicians I talk to, it's jumping into the first thing we start talking about is mindset, right? We start talking about what's an asset, what's a liability.
Yeah.
And just very, very basic and figuring those things out. And then talking about 401ks and stocks and bonds and mutual funds and ETFs and all those things that can go to zero, but hard assets do not go to zero. You mentioned tax advantages. There's still tons of tax advantages that physicians can realize even if they invest passively. If you invest in stocks and bonds and you get dividends on those, you're paying taxes on it. If you invest in a real estate syndication deal and they do cost segregation analysis, you're not paying taxes on that income. Now, right. There may be some recapture, but the longer they hold it, the less the recapture. Right. And also, you're getting that money that, it's the whole time value of money. You're getting the money now. Now, go put to work somewhere else. If you're going out and buying golf carts and boats and those types of things, then you're making the wrong decision. But all I can do is put cash in your pocket, make it as tax advantaged as possible, and then set you free to go find more assets to cash flow.
Love that, Danny. Danny, again, I think you and I can talk for hours and hours and hours because we're cut from the same cloth. Because I think we're maybe talking to two different audiences, but the messaging is so similar, right? Which is amazing. That I think no matter what you do in life, creating another stream of income that you don't have to work for is something everyone should look into, right? I want to make sure is that people like Danny, people like myself are available to have a conversation, come to us. Just because Danny's serving physicians does not mean that if you're a business owner, he won't talk to you. Because chances are your tax problems are similar. Your challenges are similar. You're working your butt off in a business like a physician would in a clinic or anywhere else. So we all think we're unique. We're not. Our problems, most of our problems, financial problems are similar because of the world that we live in. So I appreciate that, Danny, and thank you again for going deep into your story Danny, as you move forward in your life right now, is multifamily still the asset that you're bullish on, or you have now incorporated other assets in your portfolio?
Yeah, I talked about my faith, but when it comes to assets, I'm agnostic.
Yeah, good.
Wherever I can create cash flow, drive appreciation, realize tax advantages, I'm very, very interested. I do like multifamily, especially in 2024.
Yeah.
I feel that there's a reset upon us, right? I mean, with tons of properties purchased in 2020 and 2021 that were over market value with crazy low cap rates and even crazier underwritten exit cap rates.
Mm-hmm.
And then you compound that on terms of the bridge debt that they use to acquire these assets to the tune of like 1.7 to 2 trillion, depending on what resource you're looking at, and loan maturities coming due by the end of 2024. I think there's going to be some good opportunities in several asset classes, but currently I am a big fan of RV parks, mobile home parks, car washes. With these things, they're generally offering excellent cash flow, tons of opportunities to drive appreciation, give me my tax benefits of the depreciation, and there is much more opportunity for attractive seller financing because these are relatively unconsolidated subclasses in real estate, right?
Love that. Danny, we're coming towards the end of our recording here. So I do want to jump into a completely different side of our questionnaire. One is, there is a 20-year-old Danny somewhere listening to this episode. What's one key insight as you reflect back on your life? What's one key insight that you can give them that will alter the trajectory of their migration into wealth for good?
One? Wow, Saket, you're
I know.
pigeonholing me in here. So there's several. I mean, one of them, I guess if you're talking about somebody who's just starting out, right? I mean, you're 20, you're likely not well capitalized, right? So I would say, and this sounds kind of trite, but it's not. Read voraciously. It is the easiest way to learn from others and what they have done. It doesn't mean you'll do what they do, but it's really a way to learn the space. It's by far the cheapest form of education. We mentioned Rich Dad, Poor Dad. There's also Cash Flow Quadrant, which is a kind of a oldie but a goodie. I love Tom Wheelwright's stuff, Tax-Free Wealth, and his newer books. Tax-Free Wealth changed my life. It opened the door to depreciation. Killing Sacred Cows, Garrett Gunderson, Who Not How, Dan Sullivan. All these things will change your mindset and deprogram your little 20-year-old self from what your high school and colleges are teaching you about our financial system. They tried to sell this story to us our entire life. And the same goes for podcasts and YouTube and social channels with great content, your content, Facebook groups specific to the subclass that you're investing in. There are a ton of resources out there that are free for education for a young person trying to really make their way in this investable universe.
That's great, Danny. Danny, how are you? I usually don't ask this question, but it seemed like I want to ask this. I want to ask you this question. You said you have kids, right?
I do. 4. Yep.
4. How are you imparting your life lessons to them in a way? There's multiple ways to do that, but in a way that resonates with them.
Well, we started way back in Alaska when we bought Cash Flow Quadrant, or Cash Flow for Kids.
Yeah.
And I was shocked at the younger the child, the better they did. And that was an eye-opener for me. That was already kind of a warning sign, if you will, for the indoctrination that our kids are getting in high school about finances and those types of things. So I made it my mission to impart on them as much as humanly possible. So as far as underwriting spreadsheets, the language they use, a lot of the times they're like, teach me more. I don't feel like I know anything. But, their language is in assets and liabilities and ROI and NOI and those types of things. And I keep encouraging them. They're so far ahead of their peers just by knowing this language and understanding what an asset is, what cash flow is. But, we have SDRAs that we all invest in. I always say use a tax advantage vehicle to a tax disadvantage asset class. So anything we do actively, like flipping, we'll do in an SDRA through a third party. I have them involved in a strategy that I use with options and stuff like that kind of bookend the market. And we sell coupons to, hedge fund managers that have to buy them because they have parameters that their fund has to meet. So we're there to sell those. I taught them how to do that. They are involved in mineral rights. So they're basically, anything that doesn't require them to be an accredited investor. Obviously, they're not there yet, but hopefully they will be soon. And really, it's just practicing walking out what I preach. So if I'm talking about it, we need to figure out a way for them to be involved in it as well.
Correct. I think that's the key, right? Because you can talk to them, and no one likes to be talked at. No, if you're engaging them, if you're because that becomes lecturing, and no one's perfect. We all make mistakes, especially with the kids. They're the first ones to point you out, right? Say, well, you're not perfect. You're doing the same thing you're asking me to not to do. So why are you asking me? But if you actually show them and get them engaged, chances are it will, but it may turn their brains for good in a right direction, in a direction that's opposite, unfortunately, to the mainstream, because the mainstream world just wants you to get educated, super educated, to fit in an assembly line of working, right? That's what the schools are made to put you in an assembly line. Now you want to be in the assembly line, or you want to own the assembly line. That's really the difference that you're teaching them, which is amazing. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for sharing that insight. The last question of the show here is really, Danny, about, and because you're a man of faith, I have a feeling that you've pondered upon that question. As you reflect back on people that you interacted with, life that you've had, what's one thing that you believe humanity as a whole should migrate toward?
I'd missed the last part of that.
The humanity as a whole should migrate towards in the next few decades. Where are the gaps in humanity?
Wow, that's a really, really good question. But I always, I guess, revert to serving others. And the more we serve others, it is really difficult to be in a funk, to be in a bad mood, to be sour when you're actively giving of your time to help others. And I think we've lost that with, we're having a digital communication right now, but with our digital world, we've really lost that connection, that connectivity,
right?
The community, and learning how to truly live in a way for others, for other people, be others focused. So I think what I would love to see is people jumping in and not virtue signaling online, like all the things that they're doing. I want to see them actually doing it, right? Mm-hmm. Being out of the community, serving each other. And it can start in the home. I tell my kids all the time, feel free to do the dishes without me telling you. Feel free to take out the garbage. Right. I think the more we serve each other and give each other a value without the expectation of return, truly serving to serve,
right?
I think it really changes who we are as a person.
Love that. Danny, thank you again for sharing this insight, man. Dude, I wish we had more time to continue talking about this. This is the absolute delightful conversation. But anyway, if people want to look at you, look at the work you do, get in touch with you, where can they find you?
Yeah. And if you'll indulge me just for a second, before I give, my information, I just kind of want to share one key concept for your listeners that really has been good for me. It's been good for my close friends, my family, my kids, as we all come of age in these crazy economic times, and because all of this can seem overwhelming, especially to physicians and entrepreneurs and all those listeners out there who are overworked and stressed, it can elicit fear and anxiety and just completely stop you from moving. It can just be immobilizing. So the best way to combat that is just take a step. If you take a step, you're not stuck and you're making progress. And progress pounds out fear and empowers us to do amazing things. So I just want to lead your listeners with that. Just take that step, whatever that step is, make sure it's a forward step and empower yourself. So if they do want to talk to me about that concept or any other concept that we've talked about, obviously they can reach out to me by going to my website, which is CashFlowMD.com. That's just CashFlowMD.com. And my email is danny@thecashflowmd.com. I'd also love to give your listeners my free ebook if they'd like to have that. It's called Dose of Diversification, and it covers a lot of the questions and answers that I'm asked by doctors and other entrepreneurs really wanting to know more about real estate investing. They can get that by going to winmytimeback.com. That's winmytimeback.com, all one word.
Thank you for a generous offer. I'm sure I encourage people to look at it. I've not read that book myself, but if this conversation is of any reflection, your mind's going to be blown away. Right? So part of that is just absorbing from somebody who has been in your path. And when I say that, not necessarily, you don't have to be a physician to read the book. you could take those same concepts. Even if you're an entrepreneur, it still applies to you. Even if you're a corporate employee,
Absolutely.
it still applies to you. These concepts are evergreen and it applies to everyone. So thank you again, Danny. Appreciate your time, buddy. And thank you again for the listeners. If you're listening to this part, I always say that. Thank you, because I know your time is valuable. And while we can give you education and while we can give you money back for any offer we may have ever had, we cannot give you your time back. Time's the most valuable resource, and we appreciate you tuning in, listening in. If there's anything we can do for you, you know where to find me, you know where to find Danny. Please feel free to reach out, and we'd love to hear from you. Thank you again.
Thanks again for having me on, Saket. I appreciate it. It's been an amazing conversation.